Good evening, everybody. This is Casper from the Tropical Weather Threat Society bringing you our nightly update. And we've certainly got some upgrades and some changes that we have witnessed here over the last 24 hours. Currently, Invest 98L has a 30% chance of development over the next 48 hours and a 70% chance of development over the next 7 days. As you could see, located with the X as of the 2 p.m. outlook Eastern Daylight Time, the wave axis itself has now entered the Caribbean. So we're no longer dealing with anything out in the Atlantic. Now it is kind of over the next 48, 72 hours. We're really going to see what this thing has got in store for us. Hopefully, nothing. If we take a look at a more closer view of a satellite, we will note that that wave is coming through there here in the islands. A very broad area of rotation, no focalized central circulation as of yet, just looking at the satellite. We can definitely see it's certainly trying to get some kind of energy maybe in this particular region right here, but it is certainly too early to say exactly what that is going to do. Another area here is another developing area of low pressure out here, and we're getting some shower and some thunderstorm activity, and we've still got that preceding tropical wave that is in front of Invest 98L. So, as this continues to move a little bit further to the west, it'll be interesting to see exactly what all materializes down here. Regardless of development, whether we get whether we get Melissa, tropical depression, anything, that is not going to matter. There's going to be some potential for some extremely heavy rainfall over the greater Antilles, getting into Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, maybe even parts of the Caymans, Turks and Caicos, potentially up into the southeastern and central Bahamas, Nicaragua, Honduras, Yucatan Peninsula over there, Belize, folks. This is going to be a very dynamic situation, especially when you get a tropical system. Well, we won't necessarily say tropical cyclone, but just a tropical system where the steering currents collapse. Then it's going to be up to, honestly, the strength of the system as to exactly what is going to transpire with that. So, taking a quick look, I've got here radar out of Barbados. Heavy shower and thunderstorm activity rolling through a lot of the islands here. One thing that I did notice here on radar, looking at it before the live, is this particular island right here, and I think that's St. Lucia, but I could be wrong. Uh, I'm seeing a lot of what looks to be windward side mountain. I hope that's interference, because there's a lot of reflectivity popping up there. And if that is to verify, that could lead to some flash flooding there. So just keeping a close watch on it all. Now, we're going to jump into all of the modeling for Invest 98L. And as you can see already, there is quite a bit of disagreement and divergence between the models. First off, a lot of the overall means or averages of things, they're not even developing the system. There are quite a few of them that do not get this to go. And though there are some that do get it to potentially take off and then develop. H Wharf being the most aggressive here with 88 knots moving into the southwestern peninsula here of Haiti. Um, this is going to be, unfortunately, one of those situations to where if it does develop, it could gain significant intensity rather quickly. Although it will be dealing with a little bit of shear, but the water temperatures could very easily overcome that as well. Now, here tonight, we're going to go through the ensembles, but if you notice, I've got them all set to zero. And we're going to take this forward and just show everybody kind of how this all materializes. So here now we're out to day 3, and we're, as far as the Euro is concerned, we're south of Haiti, south of Jamaica, and kind of in between those zones. Now, as we continue to roll this forward, day 4, day 5, day 6, there's some development, there are some colors. But there are quite a few of the ensemble members that are not developing this at all. Let's see if I can jump down here and get a little bit more of a close-up view. As we can see, there's certainly not 50 members here that are showing development. And as we go forward in time, if something remains there and it remains of intensity, then with the next frontal boundary, we may see that creep northward. All right. One thing that we do not want to have is for this to make it into the Western Caribbean and kind of just meander around and take its sweet time. We don't want to see that. All right. This is going to be, like I said, a very, very tricky situation because a lot of it's going to have to do with the intensity that it can gain over the next, say, 72 hours. If it can gain intensity over the next 72 hours, well, then it is likely to be pulled north and try to get up out. But if it doesn't, that becomes a whole different ball game. All right, now we're going to compare the Euro with the GEFS, and as we continue to run this forward, we're out to day 3 at this point. Now, as you can see, there are very few members here. Let's get it into the Caribbean. There are very few members here that show development, not very many at all, but the ones that do, notice, it kind of stays out there south of Hispaniola and then potentially pulls northward. Now, this would be a very unfortunate situation for the Dominican Republic and Haiti. This would potentially create an unbelievable amount of rainfall. But now, as you can see, if it remains and it lingers and it gets a little bit further to the west and then decides that it wants to develop, well, here at day 7, now you'll notice that we're getting a little bit of a difference. We're starting to see that larger intensity guidance come to play, to where we see a lot of these pinks, which are representative of 950 millibars. Well, actually below 950 millibars. So it would be, at that point, you consider the pinks being relation to a major hurricane. And again, not all of them show that. We've got a little handful there, but you also have to keep in mind that quite a few of them also wanted to exit this out to the northeast there in the beginning of the run. So, well, kind of midway of the run. So, again, a lot of uncertainty and some really, really questionable stuff as to exactly what this system is going to do over the next 48 to 72 hours. And just by looking at its kind of development and its gained structure over the last 24 hours, I'm kind of trending to where maybe this may try to develop a little in the earlier portion of this. But then again, Mother Nature is going to do what Mother Nature does. Does not play on a time schedule. Doesn't care what any of us think, doesn't care what the models do or say. It's going to do what it's going to do. We do our best to try to filter through the data and figure it all out, but at the end of the day, especially this time of year, Mother Nature could get a little tricky. So what we've got here now are the Euro AI, and we're going to compare the artificial intelligence models with our physics-based regular legacy models. And I've got this out 3 days, and again, we're noticing kind of this large cluster of developmental potentials here south of Hispaniola. And that's kind of critical because then you see that we don't get that similar progression. Everything is moving at a certain speed, and then all of a sudden, in about 48 hours, that forward speed really begins to slow down. And it's at that point that if we've got a decent amount of convection, that development is likely to occur. Right now, we're at 70%. Now, if we look here, 96 hours, getting into the 120 range, if it develops early, it is likely to be a Hispaniola getting into the Turks and Caicos and southeastern Bahamas potential issue. Now, if I run this forward and it stays around and it stays weak, it really doesn't get enough intensity to draw northward to where the frontal boundary kind of pulled on it just a little bit, but it wasn't enough to be able to exit it off into the open waters of the Atlantic. Now it's going to hang around and linger. And I'll show you guys the high pressure that's going to be in the way and what is causing that. And then by the time that we get to day 10, depending on where this is located, now the next frontal boundary is coming in to capture it due to its increased intensity at this point in time. And then exiting it out to the northeast eventually. I mean, if you guys really want to know, when we go into La La Land, though, we don't have a lot for Florida unless we're still talking about this, getting into not this coming week, but the following week. If we're still talking about this at the beginning of next work week, then we may have a different outcome on this. Now, we're going to compare all this with the Google DeepMind. And as you could see, the DeepMind already has Invest 98L here located. We'll run this forward and we're going to get to 72 hours. And this is where things get really interesting. Let me get this cone off. I forgot how to turn the damn tracks off. Give me a second, folks. There we go. All right. So, the Google DeepMind is made up of 50 ensemble members. Now, if we take a look here, we've got an awful lot of signal here. I did not count this because there are that many. That at least leads to, okay, we certainly need to watch in this particular area. And if you notice, again, it is south of Hispaniola here at about day 3. Now, if I pull up our box on this, and we did not, I got to turn the tracks back on. Let's get that off of there. No, that's not what I want off of there. We shut that off. We'll be a lot better. Okay. So what we're looking at again. Now, this is a day 3 look. And as you could see, we have quite a bit of the guidance and the ensemble mean itself, taking it off up to the northeast and then over portions of Hispaniola. Now I'm going to turn this wind speed back on because that is a critical part of this. So let's go ahead and discard this, and we're going to run this forward just a little bit more. And as you could see, the majority of those members want to drag it off. Now here we are at day 6. This is where if that storm is still hanging around, that's when the wind directions change and the direction of the overall wind flow shifts. So it again, it's a lot of timing. Google DeepMind has performed very well this year. This, I hate to say this, but what we see with the Google DeepMind is going to be the best case scenario with this if development occurs. Because if this hangs around, somebody's going to get hit hard and potentially very, very hard. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our 850 millibar vorticities. We have the Euro on the left and the GFS on the right. This is representative of areas of spin or vorticity at approximately 5,000 feet or around 1 mile above the ocean surface. Now, as we run this forward, again, we're getting to about the 48-hour mark, and notice the distance that it takes in about the first 48 hours, and then all of a sudden, things begin to slow down dramatically. That's when we start to see organization. Now, the Euro is very, very broad area of low pressure. Here we're out 3.5 days. The GFS, on the other hand, has a little bit more of a focused area of vorticity, and at this point, it is beginning to develop into a bona fide tropical cyclone. Now, as you could see with the Euro, it still kind of keeps it very broad. GFS wants to develop it quite a bit, and it is going to be able to feel a little bit of a flow from a different level. The Euro's overall solution from the deterministic gives 98L a very shallow feature. It does not extend up high into the atmosphere, as to where the GFS has a very well-defined area of vorticity here at the 850 millibar, which allows it to get a little bit more vertical alignment with the storm and a little bit more vertical structure, reaching up higher into the atmosphere with its shower and thunderstorm activity around the central core. That being said, that is kind of the factor that is allowing it to be pulled. Well, as you could see with the Euro, we don't have that same scenario. It's still very broad, still very shallow. The Euro then, in response to the high pressure that builds back in over portions of the southeastern United States in response to being behind this frontal boundary, then allows for a little bit of a westward component because it's hang around too long. It's not there. It's hasn't exited the scene. This is when things start to become quite concerning if it is still there. Now, the GFS, because of the initial strengthening and the initial organization, it allowed the frontal boundary to then pull on the circulation itself. And it gave it a little bit more of a northeasterly motion, did not clear it out, as you could see here at day 7. Was not strong enough to immediately be captured by the trough and exit rapidly out to the northeast. It is now come up over portions of Hispaniola and basically lost its surface kind of feature at that point. It's lost its surface circulation. So now we're looking at more of a very broad mid level circulation, which is still going to be quite impactful. But if you've noticed, it hasn't moved either. Then the next frontal boundary comes in, has some coherence, and then is ushered out into the open waters of the Atlantic. As to where the Euro is concerned, because it never had that initial intensity and it never got that initial organization, it never felt that northeasterly tug. At that point, it slipped it a little further to the west. Now, here we are at hour 240, which is highly subject to change, but it's leaving this in a very, very particular spot to where intensification could happen in earnest quite a bit. I don't want to make anybody anxious or nervous, but if this storm is still, if we're still talking about this being in the Caribbean this time next week, folks, somebody's going to get hit hard. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Somebody's going to get hit potentially very hard. And just, we're going to have to continue to monitor this. But it could be kind of a thorn in everybody's plans, and it's a terrible situation because we don't have the information that on the track or the potential, where it may go due to its intensity in the first 72 hours. So, and that, if it does, then it ends up over Hispaniola and potentially causes some catastrophic flooding. If it doesn't, then it ends up staying weak, slipping out to the west, and then potentially causing catastrophic flooding, wind impact, storm surge, and all other facets of everything of what a really intense hurricane can offer. Because folks, I wish I could tell you more. I really do on this one. I really, really wish that I could just be like, all right, this is what it's going to do. This is what we're looking at. But unfortunately, Mother Nature is not wanting to show her cards just yet. Until we get a launching point or a closed center of circulation, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for the models to try to pick up on this. So one thing that we can do is take a look at our humidity models. Again, we've got the Euro on the left and the GFS on the right. We have our 500 millibar graphics on the top, our 700 millibar graphics on the bottom. This is to represent dry and moist air between the areas of around 10 to 18,000 feet into the atmosphere. And what this really does is it's going to highlight any frontal boundaries that are coming from the United States mainland and the continental U.S. And here we are out day 3, and we can see that there goes that low pressure. Some of the moisture on the Euro is being captured. Here may be a little bit of a shear component and kind of elongating and stretching out that mid-level moisture, which is why we don't see the Euro getting it organized quickly. The GFS focuses some of that energy a little bit more in and around the wave pocket, doesn't really allow the trough to take away and stretch out and elongate that moisture as to where the Euro does. But keep an eye on Florida and even parts of Cuba and the Yucatan. Even as we roll this out, there are more and more frontal boundaries that are continuing to progress through the entirety of the United States. Now, if the low pressure center is existing over here where the GFS is concerned at the 500 millibar, if the majority of that focused energy is over Hispaniola, that's going to help to drag that frontal boundary and that dry air further than what it would have done without it. As you could see with the Euro, there are large differences, and a lot of it has to do with just the moisture itself. All of those showers and thunderstorms, they have weight. Your thunderstorm, just one thunderstorm. Google how much one thunderstorm weighs. And that's just one. Now multiply that across numerous showers and thunderstorms across the basin. It's not going to be very easy for that cooler, drier air to get through an area that has an abundance of moisture. They resist one another. So at that point, you get a lot of drag, and we won't go into all the in-depth there. But if we get a scenario like we see with the GFS, we're getting a ton of dry air being drugged back on the western side, and it's really pushing things down into the basin to where at that point you could pretty much call hurricane season likely over with if the GFS verifies. Again, if the Euro verifies, it's being a persistent little, I almost cussed, and it's just being persistent. Let's put it to you that way. I've got plenty of words for it if it decides that we're still going to be talking about it here in a week, being lingering down there in the Caribbean. I'll have plenty of choice words for it at that point in time. So now what we're going to be doing is taking a look at our wind shear models. We've got the Euro on the left and the GFS on the right. This is representative of winds between approximately 5,000 to 40,000 feet. Now, as I run this forward, we will note we're going to get this to day 3, and there still exists a decent amount of shear across portions of the basin. The question is, on the GFS, does this area of low pressure in the southwestern Caribbean create somewhat of a binary interaction and allow for a lot of wind flow to come from the south and the southwest to really feed that moisture into the system? And as we continue to run it forward, you could see that the northeastern side of that overall broad area of circulation with the GFS becomes the dominant feature at that point, kind of shifts things around. We don't get a lot of shear in that particular area. Maybe some ventilation on the northern side due to the trough and the little bit of a jet streak that we've got there. So the moment that it made contact with Hispaniola, though, it loses the intensity that it needed to draw further north into the east to continue to stay captured. And unfortunately, that doesn't occur. With the Euro, we're leaving it down here again to linger. And we see signals of maybe an upper level anticyclone or high pressure beginning to develop in the place of where the shower and thunderstorm activity would be occurring, to where it is creating its own weather environment at that point. And this is the part that is very concerning, because the signal that I have, and I've seen this a couple times now, we get the circulation here on the Euro. You get great ventilation off on its northern side. Then you're also getting a great channel of ventilation on its southern side. This is what is known as dual channel outflow. If that were to verify, while underneath an anticyclone that it is in control of itself, while that is present, watch for those central pressures to drop like you just sent a rock off the side of a skyscraper. Until something else were to influence on that, this, granted, we're out 240 hours, and going forward from that would be potentially catastrophic. And the part that concerns me, and this is why I'm going to show it here on Earth Null, this is going to show us the GFS solution. And I've got this at the 500 millibar level. I had our trusty green circled there on where Invest 98L is currently located. And now I've run this out 4 days. And the reason that I've run this out 4 days is to show everybody that it's very obvious that we have what would be Melissa there. You've got this other area of low pressure that is continuing to feed moisture in from the southern side. But here is that trough, okay? And this is the one that is kind of responsible for giving that pull, but it never really gets caught. This high pressure ridge is the problem, because as you could see, it rolls in about right here. If this storm is a little bit too far west, did not get tugged and pulled by this low pressure here, then we're going to see this potentially come back like this. And if it gets into this region, we've got a problem. We've got a big problem, because now you have to wait on either this one to come through, which it doesn't look like that this is going to be the catalyst. It looks like this is going to move on through. So then you've got to go up the line further, and that would be your next opportunity. So you've got to wait on this to cruise, or take this track, or whatever track it's going to take. You've got to create a weakness in the ridge. The only way you're going to create a weakness in the ridge is by getting a low pressure system. Unfortunately, it takes time. As you could see, we'll just go right here. You've got a deep layer right here. You've got a short wave right there. And you've got another deep layer right here with an atmospheric river absolutely stomping the west coast of the Pacific Northwest and the west coast of Canada there. Absolutely stomping them. But as you could see, we don't want this to linger. We just don't. All right, taking a quick look at our MJO, and then I'll check for questions here real quick before we get to parts beyond. Phase 2, moving quickly into Phase 3 with a decent amplification on quite a few of the ensembles. High-res GFS and GEFS are also calling for this to move into Phase 3, being, decently amplified at that point, getting into Phase 4, and then potentially kind of quickly trying to make it through its phases and cycles and running across the planet. We would like for that to slow down a little bit, especially when you hit the Phase 4, Phase 5. Allow for some suppressive air across our portions of the basin. allow some of these frontal boundaries to continue to work their way southward and turn the spigot off for hurricane season 2025. All right, I'm now going to check. I don't see much there. All right. Good evening, David. No. James is over there on YouTube, and no. I really, we've gone and done so good all year long with the impacts in the Atlantic Basin. Everybody, practically except for our unfortunate friends there in Bermuda and along the coastal regions of the United States, but nothing other than Bermuda were a direct impact. We're so close to getting out of this season with no, severe impacts to anybody. And if this thing slips, and we're getting towards the end, we're almost to Halloween. You look at the global tropics hazards outlook and you see the 29th through the 4th, no tropical cyclone development. Come on, we've got one more. We just need Mother Nature to cooperate with us. Give us the break. And now U.S., we're looking halfway decent unless again, we're still talking about this, getting into the beginning part of the work week next week. If we're still talking about this storm, then maybe parts of southern Florida could end up being in play. It's certainly too early to make that any, concrete, confident determination because it's wild out there right now. All right. Jumping out to the eastern Pacific, we do have a highlighted area of interest out here with a 10% chance of development over the next 48 hours and a 40% chance of development over the next 7 days. We are absolutely not worried about this in the slightest. Looking at the euro, I've got that out 15 days. Here's 10. Play Where's Waldo with this thing. The GFS or the GEFS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you give it maybe 15-20% chance of getting some type of organization going on there. But again, no threat to land. And looking at the Euro AI, just because it's there. There again, not much to talk about. Now, with the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, this is where things get interesting. We have Tropical Storm Feng Shen, and then we have our new tropical cyclone Chengi down here into the southern Indian Ocean with, and I am definitely going to put a highlight on that. We've got a spot here that needs to be monitored, and this whole mess here with another potential area there. Because of the enhanced Madden-Julian oscillation phase rolling into this region, take a look at the amount of shower and thunderstorm activity that you see. Big time. A lot of lift, upper level divergence, allowing for a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity to then exist. All right, getting into Feng Shen. As we could see, it did move south of Manila. It never really went over the northern portions of Luzon as it was forecast. Did quite a bit of a more westerly jog and slip. It has now emerged out into the South China Sea, 40 knots on its maximum intensity, 45 miles an hour. Still forecast to to attain typhoon status here, or hurricane classification for wind speed at 65 knots, and then turn to the southwest and hopefully weaken considerably before it gets to land. Vietnam has had enough with tropical cyclones, and China as well. They no more, especially up here into the Gulf of Tonkin and the Hainan Peninsula, getting into northern portions of Vietnam. Absolutely not. Leave them folks alone. They have had enough. And jumping down into the southern Indian Ocean. As we could see, it did go close to Diego Garcia, United States military interest out here, and it is going to continue off to the west southwest and potentially getting close to Madagascar as we get into later on this week. So, a lot of turmoil going on there in Madagascar. So, with everything that is going on, we hope that this remains a non threat and remains offshore. No impacts to anybody. So, all right, everybody, that's about all that I have here for tonight. We will be back live again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, with hopefully some news on that. We'll see if we get any hurricane reconnaissance out there. I can tell you that we had none right now. So we're just going to really wait and see, folks. I mean, that's the unfortunate part about when we get into this part of the year. By the time that we figure things out and Mother Nature does decide to show her cards, you've only got like 2-3 days. Maybe, hopefully. You know, like it's not like watching them when they come off of Africa and we get like 5-7 days of them coming across like we've seen with this one. But this one, unfortunately, is not forecast to develop until really it gets south of Hispaniola there, and then that's when we're really going to have to watch it and just really hope for the best for everybody out there. So please continue to monitor. No anxiety, no anxiousness, but just understand the amount of uncertainty that still remains within the forecast. And right now, there's not a lot of options that have been removed from the realm of possibilities. So it's all depending on what this storm wants to do over about the next 72 hours. So, all right, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Good night.